Hello and welcome. What you're about to see is a conversation about Catalyst, connecting art and social justice, the final art exhibition launched during our stay at Gracie Mansion. When our family moved into Gracie, we asked, where are the stories of New Yorkers that we know? And how can we truly make this the people's house? In different ways, each one of the 4 art exhibitions has answered those questions. Catalyst, Windows on the City, New York, 1942, and She Persists have all shown our city's beauty and diversity. And we have highlighted New Yorkers whose contributions have for too long been ignored. That's especially true of our final exhibition, which has been open since February. Catalyst explores movements that have questioned social norms and fought discrimination in our city over the past 50 years. Right now, the message of Catalyst could not be more timely. New Yorkers are voting in record numbers, leading multicultural protests in our streets, and standing up against the systemic racism and injustice that have plagued us for far too long. And at the heart of this movement are our young people, students proving every day they are never too young to make a difference. Through their art, their protest, and their moral leadership, they are shaping our city's future and giving us all much needed hope. Today, we'll watch a powerful conversation between our Cultural Affairs Commissioner, Gonzalo, Casals, and 7 high school students and artists from across our city. The students reflect on their own art and that of renowned artists. They talk about what it's like to grow up in this era and about their dreams for themselves, their city, and their country. These are the kind of conversations Catalyst is meant to inspire. And while COVID-19 has closed Gracie's doors to the public for now, I invite you to explore this beautiful collection online. There are nearly 80 works of art representing more than 50 artists, activists, collectives, and student groups tackling the most critical issues of our time. I hope the pieces and the conversation help you to look at and think about our city and our world from different perspectives. I hope our young people inspire you just as much as they have inspired me. And I hope to see you back here at Gracie for a free guided tour as soon as we can safely reopen the People's House. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome everyone, my name is Gonzalo Casals. I'm the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs for the City of New York, and we're today at Gracie Mansion with 7 amazing emerging artists from different high schools across New York City. And we're just having a conversation after having seen the show Catalyst here at the Mansion. Is there any work that really captured your attention, any theme?
It was pretty ironic to see the mantelpiece that was a result of slave labor, and have like a Black artist create a piece that represents being surrendering to the power to oppressive people, especially when the owner of this house was a slave owner.
Right, everybody remembers that piece? So we have this white fireplace, and on top of the mantle, We have the work by Hank Willis Thomas. Can somebody describe that work for a minute?
It was different people, like a bronze sculpture of people like raising their hands in surrender, even though it's
Like,
supposed to. Most people would think it's like for freedom. It's for like they're surrendering themselves.
and then right above that piece,
It was Martin Luther King's "I Am a Man."
it was the work is the work of Glenn Lingon, another African American artist who took the idea from these signs that Martin Luther King had done with during a strike for transit, and and just turning that into a work of art.
Uh, when you asked earlier what was a piece that struck with us
Yeah.
the most, I was just looking for the name of it, and it was People's Flag Show by Faith Ringgold.
And what called your attention about that work? What's so special about it for you?
Specifically because of one, when I remember viewing at the MoMA one of her pieces of, I believe it was called Die, and it was an image of black and white figures being murdering each other in a sense. And when I think Faith Ringgold, I typically think of her portraiture in a sense and her way of coloring people's faces with the blue highlights and such and such. And to see her to create a flag, I thought that was different. I had a different taste of what she was providing, and not just I guess visuals to aid African Americans, but visuals to aid all Americans, because the American flag, it is as being as a symbol of this country, it can be used in so many ways, and I've heard of stories of people burning flags in ways of protest and how that was an issue. You have people wearing flags on like all different kinds of clothing, and it was like, it was interesting to see it in that way.
Can you share some of the words that
Share
appear
some
in
of the
that
words?
that work? Right, the flag is made out of also different words, right?
So the first sentence is what I read and I thought
Yeah.
struck me the most. It was, the American people are the only people who can interpret the American flag, meaning it is our flag. We can do what we please with our flag, you know? And some people may disagree what we do with it, and some people may agree, but at the end of the day, it represents us, all of us in this room, and our values.
And do you think that that when we talk about the American people, do you think we're all the same? We're treated all the same?
Well, I
What
mean, clearly not. I mean, we wouldn't be protesting today if we were. I think as a country we have made much progress, but in my eyes, I think we're not where we could be. I think there's a lot of room for growth and for progression. And yeah,
So we were talking about you mentioned the work of Hank Willis Thomas, Glenn Lingo, the cell phone, right, on the eyes, the flag by Faint Ringwald. What are the themes behind these, right? We're talking about social justice. What are the social justice issues that you think these artists are trying to bring up with this work? Yes.
So with the artwork and looking at the artwork, a lot of the artwork was influenced by change and fighting for change and wanting change, and so like Black Lives Matter, on women's rights. It just a lot of the things that people are fighting for in the past and even now, and to add on what she said, so in that century we came a long way, but I feel like history repeats itself, and the only difference is that is modernized.
So can you talk more about that? You're saying history repeats itself, right?
Well. I feel like a lot of the stuff that happened back then, still happens now, like riots, protesting, speaking out against the government, stuff like that. But and we came a long way from that, because you have technology, we have we, we we just have so many access to things now, but it's still the same with the same problems.
So the problems that Black and brown communities marginal communities based on race, ethnicity, sexuality, migration status are not new, right? Um, and how are these artists? What examples you can give me about these artists reacting to these issues? You know, something. Yes.
One is on page 27 on in the book, and the artwork is called "Help End Demonstrations," and it's in a grayscale, and one is holding a peace sign. A woman is holding a sign saying "Stop War," and there's a black man that is saying that it's talking about segregation against black people, and that shows that back then they deal with the same issues as we do now.
So, are there any social justice issues that are more important to each of you than others, or is anything that has been on your mind lately more than we're living very interesting times, right?
Yeah.
I believe they all hold great significance. To put one above the others, I don't think it defeats the
But
purpose of.
just for you, right? Is there something that you feel like affects you the most, or you've been
Well,
thinking?
if I were to speak in my terms and in my home, being the daughter of of a Jewish man and a Dominican woman, you see both sides. So when I go to, let's say, my white family's house or my father's side's home, they hold different perspectives than if I were to go to my mom, who on the hand experiences all of these things, being a dark-skinned woman, having to face police brutality, excuse me, and all that comes with it. And then you have them watching on the outside, doing their best to help, me being stuck in the middle. It's like, where do I lie? What am I supposed to do? How do I contribute? And how do I essentially, I believe it's empathize or sympathize with my mother, who I believe is one of the greatest people and someone of great importance to idolize in my world, and to see her go through these issues that I believe she doesn't deserve simply because she is of dark skin is it's crazy to me. And knowing that I have these privileges that my mom doesn't have, it's like, as your daughter, what can I do to help you? And where can I show the people? Where can I tell someone that, allow them to see how I view you, so that these issues don't happen, so you won't be the next Trayvon Martin or George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, if that makes sense.
So, do you see your mom and everybody else? Do you see your families, your communities represented in some of these artwork or their experiences? How so, Marvin?
Sometimes you be like comparing how the society is like going and how the people are being treated, and you live with your like family every day, and then you can see how things are going for them, and how they're working on the society and stuff.
Was there any particular artwork that sort of made you connect?
Um, and page 13, the cop,
The cup.
yeah.
Yes, talk to us about it.
So I think it was kind of harsh the way that this woman had to do stuff that she didn't want to do, and being forced to do a lot of stuff that was being pushed into her and stuff. Yeah.
Anybody else? Do you
Um,
see yourself or your families of your communities? Yes, go ahead.
for me specifically, on page 53, the Breakfast Still Life with Greta, um, that piece resonates with me because I live in a Puerto Rican household and I have everything except the Yale cup. And so for me, knowing that I live in East Harlem and my neighborhood is being regentrified, some of the stuff I may not see in the next 10 years. They may not sell it because, people are coming in and stripping us of our culture. And as upsetting as that is, it's the harsh reality.
So, and it's not only the food. What other aspects? You live in a beautiful neighborhood. I work in that neighborhood at Museo del Barrio for many years. And where are the aspects of the Puerto Rican culture are disappearing from that neighborhood?
Yeah, like a lot of the artwork, especially, like there's pieces that have been painted over. Some of the graffiti is, washed away. and they're knocking down buildings that have historical significance, and so a lot of people are being affected by it, but also no one's speaking up against some of it. But there are some people who go around like and they knit and they put up things that say like vote, or they have like sunflowers that are knitted by someone at home. So there are still some pieces and some artists who are trying to keep the art there, but there's also people who don't want it anymore. So
So there's the culture is disappearing, right?
yeah.
Yes.
Um, like Michaela said, with the gentrification in my neighborhood, because I live in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, and it's a very diverse, I guess, place because it's on the edge of Williamsburg and Greenpoint, and it's very Asian and heavily Puerto Rican, Dominican, and I guess with the gentrification, with all these people like moving in and changing up these houses, it's like weird to see because you'll have very like it's a very poor low middle class neighborhood, working class, and you'll see these very like rundown buildings that have been there since my dad was a kid, and then you'll see these new buildings that are very overpriced like goods, like a deli that they just put up was like vegetarian, vegan food, and it was dedicated mostly to the white people that were moving in, and it was like heavily expensive, like $10 for a sandwich and stuff like that. And it's just the places that I used to go to that were like cheap and stuff, like supermarkets. They raised their prices because of all the new buildings and all the types of people that were moving in, and it just seems very out of place with all these like new stores and beauty places and jewelry places and apartments like
If,
in the
if
weirdest spots, and it's just like crazy to see how everything is changing to fit more of the modern standard instead of just keeping like the history, since it is like a Puerto Rican neighborhood. And I just think it's like crazy like to watch happen right before your eyes.
So, as artists, right, we've been talking about gentrification. We've been talking about civil rights. We're talking about discrimination based on who you are. As artists, I asked you this question early on. What do you think is your role um, in dealing with issues that our society is facing?
So the thing with art that's like the common link with art is that it's a reflection of our culture and philosophies. Without art, we wouldn't have known the core values of the Greek and Romans, especially the Greeks who valued perfection and the ideal human body. While with like like the Italian Renaissance was about like revival of those ideas, except tying them back to God. Uh, so our duty as artists is to make work that's timeless. Art is eternal, life is short. I forget the Latin phrase for it. I think it was Arsa longa vita brevi, something like that.
I don't speak Latin, so.
No, no, me neither. It's just something
Yeah.
my teacher would say, that our point as artists is to make artwork that's timeless, that to amplify our voices and uplift and bring light to issues that the media isn't really covering. And
So, but you were saying, art is provides reflection.
yes,
It also allow us to lift up the voices that probably the mainstream doesn't, lift up. Everybody agrees with that or disagrees? In which way do you see that happening in an exhibition like this, even in the artwork that you see in this room around us?
Um, I really wanted to talk about the Small American Fires piece that was in the Peach Room. It's on page 29, and it was just it could be viewed as a global warming issue, but mainly it's just detailing the slash and burn to like erase native land, and I feel like that's a good example of how history or people's culture, like native culture, is just erased and try to
I feel like people try to cover it up by, right now in California, like California is burning, and the main issue that we think of is global warming, but it can also be viewed as a. I'm not saying that it's like all fabricated, but some of it could be. It's just convenient to try to erase native culture, yeah, and that could shed light on gentrification, like when like a foreign force is coming in and trying to cover up what was already there. I feel like our job as artists is really to combat that erasure and just shed light on these issues.
Yeah, I mean that works in multiple levels, right? It speaks about the erasure of the indigenous people, but also the erasure of the knowledge of how to live with the land, right? And rather than destroy it, and how that goes away, and we find ourselves with a piece of ice floating with a cell phone inside, right?
Yeah.
So, what's another way in which you, as artists, have a role in our society? We said reflection, lifting up voices. Yes.
So with art, I feel like art is kind of like a dictionary, like 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 by looking at art, you you like learn stuff, and like this and like try to decipher and pick out about the meanings of the artwork, and trying to learn and trying to figure out the event, like 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 um like which event happened and why. Just like guessing.
It helps us, tell stories, and those stories to be transmitted over time, right? And sometimes there are stories of those are marginalized. They're usually not recorded, right? So, is there any artwork on the exhibition that you've seen that tells a story that probably we didn't know and the mainstream did not know? Right? Do you remember Felicita Mendez? Who does remember the story of Felicita Mendez and what happened to her and her kids?
I just remember the general story that her family came in to like a majority white neighborhood, and the community was basically trying to get them to leave, but she was just very adamant on staying and fighting for her right to live there as any other person would.
And she wanted to send her kids to school, right? And the Board of Education said, no, your kids don't belong in this school. And they couldn't join the school, right? Those are stories that most of us didn't know until we're confronted with work that really focuses on the experiences of these communities, right? Is there any story that you would like to tell about your life, your experiences, your communities through your work?
It's not really like social justice, but I guess
It's
it's like
okay.
mental health. Like that's something that gets talked about a lot now, since like a lot of the suicide, anxiety, and depression rates have gone up, especially through COVID, and abuse has a lot to do with that in some families. Not me personally, but like my lover, like she's in that kind of situation, and a lot of my friends are in that situation, and I guess it's just like sad to see that happening when you feel like you should be able to prevent it, but you can't do anything but just sit back and try to spread the word to help get them out of that situation. And so I guess that's not really like talked in depth about with teens. They mostly take it as a joke, at least my friends do. And so I think like making art based on that, and like things like that come from that kind of situation, that stem from that, and what happens before and after, I think helping make art of that will help spread the word and show like what it's really like versus what it looks like on the outside.
Yeah. There's a lot of stigma, right, with mental health. I deal with mental health issues, and until very recently, did not tell my friends about that, right, because I felt embarrassed about that. And mental health and access to health in general, it's a social justice issue, right? Not all of us have the same access to mental health. So through your work, talking about the experience of your lover, very much how Felix Gonzalez Torres does in his work, and so many others. It's a way as an artist, how to raise conscious around these issues. Anybody else? Yeah.
I just wanted to add that, like, I feel like art is also a very convenient form to express those ideas because a lot of the time it's much easier to look at a picture or a painting than it is to read an article, especially now for teens. I feel like it's a good alternative to get people interested in these issues.
We're in a very visual
Yeah.
society, right?
Yes.
So, and is there any issues in particular that you would like to tackle through your work?
Well, personally, I don't usually like delve into social issues when I make art, but I do like to focus on subjects of color so that I'm being inclusive in my art and just like portray my community in a beautiful light and just, yeah, bring awareness to that.
You were saying something.
Oh, no, I was going to add on to what you were saying about mental health, how it's not something that's taken seriously, especially amongst men who are expected to be strong and cold and not very emotional and not very in touch with their feelings. So it's something that we need to like fix and change so people don't end up hurting themselves or others because they are fighting like they have this inner turmoil within themselves that they don't know how to deal with.
You were talking about representing your community, right? Do you all remember that piece? Probably one of my favorite ones of the African American women walking in the parade, carrying the frames. But what's that piece all about?
Where he said that, like back in like the 1700s and 1800s, it was very like it was a big thing to get your portrait done, like take like have people take pictures of you or like paint you, like it was a sign of wealth and that you were so high and above everyone else. And so when you have these people of color that used to be that their descendants and ancestors used to be slaves to those types of people, having holding up frames to show that they are worth something is sending a big message on how far we've come.
To add on to that, pretty much like before contemporary art, a lot of it was just representations of God, and then it moved on more to just commissions from the church or commissions from the kingdoms. And then it's only until like recently, I believe, until like the 18th century, where they introduced the concept of genre paintings, which was just paintings of regular people doing regular things. And even then, it was mostly just people of European descent. This Lorraine O'Grady's work really reminds me of Kehinde Wiley and
In
his
which way?
in the way that Kehinde Wiley remakes very iconic paintings, but instead incorporates subjects of color and symbolism of how there is a stigma against Black people and how they are criminalized in society.
Do you think after seeing this show, your work as an artist is gonna change? Yes. In which way?
Yes, because it's gonna influence us to add more detail into the message and trying to explain like just put out the message clearly in our artwork so people can understand.
You were also saying yes. How is your work going to change after seeing this exhibition?
Well, I feel like a lot of the pieces allowed you to view different viewpoints. For example, on page 34, the first piece, Muslims were dehumanized. You can view it as the artist saying that Muslims are bad, but it's not showing. Well, the the artist themselves isn't saying that, and it just depends on how you interpret the piece. And so that's kind of what I want to include in my artwork and allow people to view it however they want, whether they agree with it or they don't.
Yeah. That work specifically was done, I remember that was done by eighth graders right after 9/11, in which there was a lot of Islamophobia, right? A lot of people were having a lot of sort of negative feelings to people of Arab descent and Muslims, right? And how hopefully we're changing a little bit and understanding that issues in a different way. Anybody else? Is your work going to change after the show? It doesn't have to, but yeah.
I think more so with this exhibition, I change more as a person than as an artist. I believe I'm human first, artist second. Going back to the question you asked earlier as to whether it's an artist's job to bring light to social justice. I think it's a person's job. I believe art is just a tool we use to get the message across, to unify, to stir, the pot. But I believe it's more so focusing on us as people and the changes we make in our life. And being in this exhibition and viewing it, I more so absorb it versus as an artist. I absorb it as a human that there's certain things that I just won't understand, but I will try to make it better and easier for the other people that do. For example, I am not transgender, I am not LGBTQ, but I have a sister that is. And so I have to focus on her needs and making sure that she's okay and respecting her boundaries and her relationships with other people. And it's something I will never understand, challenge I'll never face. But I respect her for it and the way she carries herself so strong and proud. So that's just how I feel. I believe as an artist, majority of my experiences, what I would say is as an artist, I'm an expressionist. I create a visual memoir. That's my story. I take my thoughts, my ideas, everything that happens in my life, I put it on canvas. And given that my life, my existence is already a protest within itself, my work will automatically scream social justice, whether I want it to or not. So that's just how I feel in the situation.
I see a lot of nodding heads. Everybody agrees with that?
Yeah.
Anybody wants to add more to that?
Yeah, I just feel like it's really important for us to, when we look at art, we're not just looking at an image. It's more of, we have to think about the people or the community that they represent. So even though right now for some people, I feel like when they're presented with something, they'll like look at it and they'll, I don't know, talk about it at that moment, but then after that, it's like a blur for them. But I feel like it's important for us to highlight that it's not just about the painting, it's about the message that it stands for and the community that it represents.
I always like to say that art, is a window and a mirror, right? It allows us to see our own experiences and realize that we're not alone in the world, that, what's happening to me. Um, in my case, is as a queer man, as a Latinx, as an immigrant, as somebody that suffers mental health, right? I know there's a community out there. I know that somebody else is feeling the same as myself. But as you were saying about your sister, right, it's also a window to the other, to understand, how others feel and help us build empathy. So we only have a few minutes left. I wanted to hear from you. What are the main themes? What are the reasons that you would recommend people to see the show?
Like with that opening up a new window, I think especially if you don't see anything outside of your own problems, or like don't think other people have issues that they're fighting for, especially throughout time, I think coming here would be like a very eye opener for that, to see like there are other problems that are not just that are not just yours, and that people are also fighting for things probably not as loud as others, but still making their message and their problems come across, and try to be heard as much as possible by as many people as they can. So I think like having someone like that doesn't recognize like their privilege or anything, like they can come and see this and try to see it, try to have their mind open up to other issues that they might not see in their neighborhoods.
Great.
To add on,
Yeah.
I like one of the reasons why I would recommend this show is that it offers a new perspective. It's one thing to hear about historic events that have happened in a history class where you're not really paying attention or reading through a huge block of text in a history textbook. And it's another when you see the photographs of those exact events and how, and like the artwork where you see like the raw emotions those people have felt during those times. Like we're not like we live in a post 9/11 world, and since most of us here have been born in like 2003, we haven't really felt like it's direct effects, but without realizing it, we are like living. There are things that we considered normal that wasn't normal for, say, for you. Like you lived in a world before 9/11. Probably going to the airport was less hectic than before. So for us it's normal, but for you it's like, wow, this is so weird. Like I can't believe that we have to go through all of this process.
Yeah, I feel like I would recommend it because I feel like it's a good representation of just like the history of America and what we hope the future will be like. Because there's a lot of obviously the house was built by a slave owner, so just having that in mind. And I thought the idea of those mirrors that it was used as a way to like keep an eye on the
Surveil,
slaves that
right?
would, yeah, I feel like that seeing that is just, it just highlights that we America isn't always or wasn't always. I mean, I don't think that it really is now. Just a land of freedom and just advocating for equality because a lot of the times this was what it was representing. So I feel like when you see artwork that represents people of color and like social movements, it's a good way to contrast what like the original ideals that this house was built on.
And that was my last question. Thank you for that segue, right? Like we said, sort of the first lady and the team at the house were like, how we can make sure that when people walk into this house, they feel like this is the house of the people, right? The house of New Yorkers. Do you think this show and the work in this show conveys that message?
Yes, I do think this show conveys that message. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. It doesn't romanticize the past or glamorize any historic events that happened. Personally, for me, one thing that I found like very profound was the image of Candy Darling in her deathbed. Like you usually hear about people's death. You don't necessarily witness that. So to think about how she was photographed only to die a few days later from cancer, which is something that takes like a huge toll mentally for everybody that knew her. It kind of like gives you like a small sample of what they may have felt, and so like it's pretty much human nature to feel like this sort of empathy and this sort of feeling of sorrow for this person.
We need to wrap up, but anybody wants to share any last thoughts, ideas?
For me, overall, I think that much of this country's change, you write it down on paper, but you don't see it around you. You don't feel the change around you. And, I could be outside and I could hear about Gracie Mansion and about how the mayor's changing and doing things for New Yorkers, and I could not see anything. But coming in here and seeing artwork by people of color, LGBTQ, physically being able to see the diversity in this place that used to never be like that. It's confirmation that, yes, we are making progress, and it may be small, but this is a big step, to be able to walk in here and feel welcome, with my big hair, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I gonna do my hair? What am I gonna do? To feel welcome and comfortable, being myself in this place that once would have never accepted me. It's very special within itself. It's very nice, and it's comforting to know that this city cares about its people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, anybody else? So, I do the work that I do, and I like to be surrounded by artists like you because art and artists are extremely powerful. I hope that you leave inspired. I cannot wait to see the work that you'll do after this visit. And as a way to wrap up, I want to propose a short exercise. Why don't we just go around the room and we say one word that represents how we feel about us after us spending the afternoon together looking at this work. And I'll go first just to give you a little bit of time to think. And my word is inspired.
Confident.
I would say aware.
Motivated.
Relaxed.
Included.
Uplifted.
Empowered.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with me and the afternoon with me. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me.